We'll call to order the regular meeting of Dayton City Council for Tuesday, October 24th. Stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need a motion and a second for the agenda.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, Dave and Travis, any changes?
Yes. I would like to add G.1 of not waiving the tort limits for liability insurance.
G.1 tort limits. Any other changes?
Can we get just a separate vote on item G, please? So I can abstain from voting for that.
Remove that from consent agenda.
Okay.
We'll put it right afterwards.
Any other changes? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Consent agenda, I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Matt and Dave, any discussion on consent?
Yes. Page 5 of the payment of claims. What kind of concrete did we get for $63,000?
Oh, that would be, that is
Is it
concrete
just out
work.
here?
Nope. So it's concrete work done down on the Dayton Parkway intersection that we did at 81. So as part of the contract, we were supposed to pave as the southern access into the Cubes building, the 1 million square foot building.
Yep.
And so our contractor did not complete that work, from what I understand from Jason Quisberg, so we did not get charged for it. So we had to utilize their contractor to do it, which was a cheaper price, and we had to pay them separately out of that project.
Okay.
We were supposed to do it, didn't get done by our contractor, so their contractor did it for us, and we just paid their contractor to do it.
I was just questioning whether it was this sidewalk out here.
No, this sidewalk was not 63,000.
They didn't say that many times.
I did a whole building for 26.
You got any more, Scott?
No, that's it. Dave will have some.
I do not.
Are
Really?
you serious?
But we must be doing our job.
You're letting them down.
Anybody else?
I've got a couple things. So on item E, I'm curious, we talked about putting together this quote, putting together a list of intersections that need work and what they need. I feel like we spent 5 months just to get a quote to do the work. What was the 5-month delay?
Just the discussion internally on the scope of it and getting it together. We had miscellaneous setbacks.
Okay.
The intersections have not yet been identified. That'll be part of the study.
I'm glad you brought that up, man.
I expected this to be like, it's been 5 months, here's the list. Not, it's been 5 months, let's start working on the list. So I guess I'm surprised it took 5 months to get a quote together to tell us that we need to get the list done and what it's going to cost. So I think we need to do it. That's way too long in my opinion to do something like that.
That
Someone
brings
who
up-
works as a consultant, we put together quotes in a matter of like a week, sometimes quicker. So the fact it takes 5 months to get a quote together is a little extreme, but that's my opinion.
So my question will be, and it pertains kind of to all of these things, we still don't have a fire study result, and we still don't have the pavement. Where are we with all those? And by the time we get them, we're going to need a new one.
I sure hope not. So Jason can address the pavement one, and then Chief Hendrickson can address the fire study. So whoever wants to go first is that.
The pavement study is still, it's about 2 weeks behind schedule. It should be the
That was going to be
preliminary.
done in July.
No, that was the original plan for data collection. Why it seems so late is they moved the data collection all the way up to May. So that was done, but the building of the system wasn't planned until, it was, to be honest, it was supposed to be in last week.
Okay.
It should be in next week, and then we'll sit down with Marty and go through the strategies and what he wants to utilize for building the actual implementation of the plan.
Councilman Solonic, I spoke with BJ Young from Fitch and Associates this past weekend at the State Fire Chiefs Conference. He indicated that they still believe there's some issues with data because it looks like it's taking too long for us, what I got out of it, to respond. He's just double checking that, and then he anticipates that he will have a draft out for council to take a look at as in advance of being presented here to Zach and I, and then individually to those council members that are interested. I had asked him to have the presentation no later than the second meeting in November.
Any more discussion on consent? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Open forum.
One correction, Mayor, we'll have to go back to do item G, since that was pulled from the consent agenda as part of the.
Oh, you want to do that now?
Yes,
Okay.
right away.
All right, item G. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And we have
Councilor Trost abstained.
one abstention. Okay. Open forum. Oh, wait. Oh, G1 was included in
That
that,
was
right?
Consent, yep. You're
Yep,
good.
we're good.
Yep. Anybody here for open forum? Anybody online?
We do have a couple of people online. If you are wanting to speak in open forum, please use the raise your hand function. Not seeing any.
All right. Then we will move on to staff and consult updates. Go ahead, Brad.
All right, Mayor and Council, I don't have a whole lot for you. Let you know that there's a 3-week gap till the next council meeting, so enjoy the extra week off from council meetings and enjoy some time. The second thing as well is that next week is Halloween, so happy early Halloween, but just keep an eye out for those kids as they run from house to house, because it'll be dark by 6 o'clock. So. Thanks very much. That's all I got.
Amy?
I don't have anything tonight.
Marty?
I have a few things. Wellhead treatment, the building permit was approved by Metro West this week. The contractor is supplying submissions for review to Black and Beach for various pieces of equipment. They're getting those things ahead of schedule. The contractor started moving equipment onto the site. We anticipate they'll be installing silt fence and grubbing and tree removals hopefully this week, weather dependent. They will be putting some fencing around their equipment just for security, and they will be blocking off a little part of the trail by the well house there for their staging point. I've sent out invites, or Kelsey sent out some invites for a groundbreaking event on the wellhead treatment plant for November the 2nd between 3 and 4 o'clock. There will be a representative from Dean Phillips's office attending, and Senator Hoffman will be attending as well. Work is going to start on the hydro tank this weekend. That's the tank in the old village. It's the first opportunity the contractors had to get there. We posted some information on the website. There will be stuff on social media as well. And we're going to be putting some A-frames out down in the old village to notify people this work's going on. It's anticipated the work is going to take a week. There may be a little bit of discoloration, but hopefully the hydrant flushing that we just completed will have taken most of that rust out of the pipes. And there may be some slight variations in pressure just because of the way that we're going to be running the two wells together. So hopefully that's all going to go smooth. It's going to be a week's worth of work, so hopefully it's not too problematic for the people in the old village. The drainage ditch on 112th, the county have been working out there quite a lot. They found out that they don't have some easement to continue their ditch maintenance work, so they talked with the landowner to get an easement there. The landowner has agreed, so that's just going through some legal paperwork before we can get out there. The city will be working with the county to do our section down 112 that links up to Fernbrook. Once that's done, it should at least dry the field out there, because what's happening, they've got 3/4 of the pipe is full, so the water is just sitting in one area and just leaching out into the field rather than following the ditch line around. So hopefully it will dry the field out. I'm not sure what it will improve the ditch situation there too much. We replaced the sidewalk and added some drain tile and stuff on the side of City Hall here. That was just because there's a lot of cracked panels and they were trip hazards. And in the winter, it turns into an ice rink out there. So we try to swale it so the water goes out the back down into the soccer field and into the pine trees down there. Yesterday, I met with a group from the University of Minnesota on the water trails. We went to 2 sites, the DNR Landing and Elsie Stevens Park, just to take a look at what the sites are, give them an idea what the sites are like and what historic Dayton's like and what Dayton is like by the river. They're going to be doing a case study on natural resources and tourism program, what the water trail may bring to the city of Dayton. So I'm not sure what to expect out of it. We'll see what comes. We've been overseeding and grading, fertilizing parks. They should be being completed this week. While the weather's still good for getting dormant seed in the ground. The patching crew is going to be out this week to adjust manholes, gate valves in preparation for snow plowing. And street sweeping is this week. It was delayed because of rain on some of their previous projects, so it bumped us a week. So they're here this week. They got rained out today. They'll be back tomorrow.
Gary?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Kind of just a brief update on our maintenance woes, if you will. On a positive note, we did take delivery yesterday of the trailer for the new UTV. I went and picked that up yesterday, so that resides in the back garage here currently at the moment. Here coming up, we'll get the new tracks on that and then get that actually be placed here at Station 2 for deployment over the winter time. Probably since council's 3 weeks out, the next meeting, I'll bring back some potential ideas for replacement of, I'll say temporary replacement or a stopgap of our tanker. I did find one that is in good shape, but as I indicated last council meeting, I want to combine an engine and a tanker together to remove one of those from the CIP to reduce maintenance costs and so forth as that. So I'll present that here in a couple weeks.
Evening, Mayor and Council. The only update I have is the outdoor siren was installed last week on South End Lake Trail. We're still working at getting power to it, and once that's up, it'll be up and running.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just one update. The master plan effort's underway, and just a notification for council and then also the residents that listen in on the meetings. Public survey went live yesterday afternoon for the master plan. The link is on the website. It's in the announcements section for the master plan. It describes what it is, and then it's a quick 10-question survey to gather some data for that effort, and that'll be live for about 3 weeks. So if you want to let people know, it's also on the Facebook page as well.
Nothing? Jason?
Nothing here.
Amy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have anything. I'm just here to answer questions and be available if you need me.
Cool. Scott?
I got nothing.
Travis? Nothing?
I don't think so.
I just wanted to say thanks for Marty and whoever else is involved for getting together that ribbon cutting. I hope we get that publicized well to the community, because I think this has been a long time coming. We should make it a big deal, because it is. So thanks for doing that. That's all I got.
I believe I got one question, Marty. The pickleball court in River Hills. Do you have an ETA when you're going to get that post fixed?
The post has been fixed today.
Perfect, awesome. And then my other follow-up to that is, we own the land around that. Do we have plans for improving that land, or are we just going to leave it weeds for a few years, or what's the?
I spoke with Craig from Gonier Company. They are going to get their contractor out there, Wiedemer, to clean that up and seed it and regrade it and seed it. I don't know what the time frame is on that, but that's what the next step is on this. And that
Is that
will,
the stuff just east of there? Is that area just east of that?
Be west of there, south and west.
Yeah, south and west of the pickleball court there. We own that.
Towards
right.
the street.
Do we officially own that land yet, or is it not owned? Hasn't been turned over to us yet? Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking, for some reason, I was thinking we were way back, we were pondering another court there, but I might be thinking of something else.
I think at one stage there was going to be parking at that point there. There was going to be some bump out parking, but it didn't work out that way, and the parking got moved around with the developer's plan to a site where they can access from the trail system.
Perfect. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, item H. Have at it.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm here to present the water and sewer budgets. Not a lot of changes from last year to this year. I guess the major change that we had was related to what we found during the audit this year, which was the fact that we hadn't put on the books any of the water and sewer assets and the roads that we had received from developers over the numerous number of years that we've been developing. So the main change was depreciation. That doubled, or just short of doubled. $750,000 is what's expected next year for depreciation. Again, depreciation isn't something that we're going to cut a check for. I did not highlight it, but it's this number. I wish I could highlight it, but I can't, and now I can't. So it's right in the bottom right corner here. Again, we don't cut a check for it, but it is basically a savings account that we put away to be able to replace assets once they meet their useful life. Roughly, you can see that the net revenues and expenditures in the water fund are equal to the WAC fees. So essentially, anything that we are receiving from WAC fees is going towards savings, which is what the idea is, and then we will be revenue neutral in operations overall. That was what the plan was. So the idea is to cover operations with user rates, and then anything above and beyond that we can have from new connections or new services, we will have as a savings account. Any questions on the water budget overall in operations? Same thing in the sewer fund. As you can see, we don't have a whole lot of SAC fees here, but we are not net positive in the sewer fund. The idea is that we have $750,000 of depreciation, again, something that we're not getting a check for. And so the $750,000 comes off of expenditures, which then makes it $759,000 of revenue over expenditures, and that means we're net positive. So trying to save some money for the future to be able to pay for those things, but not trying to hedge our bets against everyone today as we move forward. Everything related to sewer, we don't have any wastewater treatment plants in town. We don't have any major assets in town that we have to replace related to sewer. All of our basic expansions of sewer come from developments, so we are putting that on developers to expand our system for us, and essentially just saying if there's a water or a sewer main break, we'll fix that with overall costs that we have set aside. But nothing major with sewer. On the opposite of water, which is we have wells and held treatment and water towers and all kinds of stuff there related to those things that we're not having developers pay for. Whereas the sewer, we don't have those type of things. Everything goes to Met Council, and that is one positive of Met Council. We don't have any of those large facilities that cost millions and millions of dollars. Any questions on the sewer budget overall?
So I meant to ask this about water, but it applies to both. So
Yes.
that depreciation number,
Yep.
when we're setting our rates, are we incorporating that into the expense side of things? In
Some of
determining
them,
the
yes. Not all of them. Again, the useful life is expected to say that if everything was perfectly and everything ran at exactly what we think is going to be useful life, we would have every dollar ready to go to be able to replace that. But I think we're covering roughly 50 to 75% of depreciation right now. And the sewer fund and the water fund would be a little higher than that, probably 80% in the water fund for operations overall. So trying not to cover 100%, but still being able to replace as we go forward. The main reason for that is that costs have escalated dramatically. And so we're putting it on the books for the cost that we paid for it at point A, but in 30 years, it's going to be way more than what we paid for in point A. So knowing that not everything's going to hit useful life, but at the same point, also not trying to, again, hedge everything where everyone has to pay for it today, and we hold on to it for the next 25 years. So. Great question.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Any other questions on water and sewer? Long-term plan, there was only a few changes here to the long-term plan. They're mostly way out, and then some updated costs, which are maybe difficult to see on this screen here, but try to make it as big as possible, but it's hard to see. And the main ones that we're looking at again next year is going to be that wellhead treatment plant, which we're having the groundbreaking for on November 2nd. And then some road improvements and looping and stuff that we're looking to do just to connect the system and make everything a little more fluid around if there's any sort of water main breaks. We're not isolating any one development so that they don't have water for a certain amount of time until we can get that water main break fixed. That's the main goals over the next 3 to 4 years or so. And then also adding a wellhead treatment. We put that out in 2026. That was previously in 2024. And that's wellhead treatment for the historic village area. It got pushed out. We're looking for funding for that. $6.5 million for a wellhead treatment plant that serves that historic village area is a really tough sell. But what if we can get grant money for it? It's well worth our time and money. So,
Are we looking for other solutions or?
yeah, we're looking for other solutions. We're looking for anything else. And if anything changes from the Minnesota Department of Health related to testing of the manganese level, that's what's going to drive this whole thing. And so if Minnesota Department of Health says that's a primary standard now we're forced to do something at the level of it comes out of the ground, not in somebody's house when it comes out of the tap. So that's the unfortunate part we have to deal with.
I suspect they'll tie that to funding too.
I sure hope
probably.
so.
The 2 million for the tank, was that meant to provide storage at pump one?
Possibly, yep. So
Okay.
yep, it'll be likely it'll be a tower somewhere in the historic village area. I think the identified area is either a temporary location in and near the church, as that's the highest point in the historic village area, or doing a full build out of the ultimate water tower, which will serve the entire northwest area of Dayton, which would be on just south of that, or just east of 152nd Avenue, which we had a conversation at a couple meetings ago.
Right.
So the 2 million is identified to do a temporary water tower or something that would be maybe a little more than temporary, but semi-permanent temporary kind of situation. Everything else is just way out. We put back everything on there from a few years ago that we removed off, which was like the South Dayton water treatment plant, South Dayton wells. We're not sure what Maple Grove's going to do, and so just keeping that on the 10-year horizon of, hey, we might have these expenses. We'll just continue to push those out another year if we get to next year and we don't have any word from Maple Grove. At this time, we've asked them a couple times, I think, to have conversations, and they just either haven't responded to us or say they're not worried about it right now because it doesn't expire till 2035. And so they're just saying we don't need to talk about it until we get closer, which may or may not be what we want to hear. But keeping everything on that 10-year horizon is important, and I think Marty and I discussed and said it's probably best to just keep it on the horizon, that if we ever have those big expenses, we know that they're coming along the line and we can plan for them. Any other questions related to the water long-term plan? This is the main one, so the sewer is very short. Okay. Sewer, again, there's not much out there. Every improvement that we have, if we do have any improvements on streets, we'll put some sewer work in. If we want to redo some sewer mains and upsizing those things, we'll put some costs in there, but we don't have a lot of projects that need sewer and or upsizing at this point. Again, developers are really paying for most of those things in the sewer system, so we don't have a lot of costs. Territorial road improvements, and then 113th, extension and connection of sewer down in 2025. But that's it. We don't have a lot after that, and as far as Marty and I could tell, it's about as far as we'll get until we figure out what developers want and stuff. So, any questions on sewer? Overall, just a quick, give you the cost scenario comparisons for where we're at this year. We're on the lower half of those individuals. The one we leave out every year is Maple Grove because they're an anomaly, and if economies of scale and their water's only 100 feet below the ground and blah, blah, blah. And so their costs are significantly less than every one of these on here, so it's a total anomaly. But city staff is looking for an increase of 1% in both the water and sewer rates. That's lower than we've seen in the past, and that's based on the fact that we've had a significant amount of increased usage this year. Increased usage means that we collect more revenue on every gallon of water. So if we have increased usage, that offsets that need for an increase that much more. That economies of scale term. Any questions on utility rates? But at this moment, we're just proposing, these are utility user rates, not connection fees, not long-term fees, not any of those type of fees, just user rates. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
All right. On to item I.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight before you is a concept plan presented by Enclave Companies. So this is the Stensley property. I think you're all familiar with it. This is the third concept you will have seen on this property. This concept is for 7 3-story multifamily apartment buildings. It's located at 16850 Territorial, so it's right at the intersection of Territorial and County Road 81. It's a gross acreage of 25.6 acres for all 3 sites. There are 3 parcels included within the site area. It is guided mixed use, which is anticipated at a minimum of 12 units an acre for the site as a whole. It's zoned A1 agricultural right now, so there would be a future rezoning that would be necessary to the mixed use district with a formal application. And it is in the current MUSA staging area as sewer and water service are available to the site. Just to quickly go over some natural resources on the site, because they do play a role in how it's laid out. There are multiple wetlands that exist on site. One wetland will be impacted, or is expected to be impacted, and will require mitigation. That would be the western one bordering County Road 81. And then 2 wetlands appear that they won't be impacted. The major wetland being the one on the eastern side, on the east property line. You'll see on the concept that none of the development impacts that area. So the site plan north is going to be to the left side of the screen, just to orient this so we can make it as large as possible on the PowerPoint. So we're going to start on the south side. The south side is the Territorial Road intersection as it comes off of the existing connection, which is in the slightly lighter hashing out to here. With the development, there would be a realignment of Territorial Road out to County Road 81, which would move the connection further south. That is right away that the city has currently that was dedicated with the Territorial Commons development. And that would serve as the access. The pork chop showed here, staff's still working. It hasn't identified exactly what that intersection will look like, whether it's a pork chop or a roundabout or some type of other traffic device. So that's still ongoing, and the cost associated with that is still a conversation as well. But that's where the main access into the development will come from. From there, as you can see, it moves up and becomes a private drive or a private access in, and then basically becomes a loop that goes all the way through the site, providing parking, access to the various apartment buildings throughout this area, and then to the detached garages they show in the center. To go over, there are 7 buildings, 4 on the eastern side, 3 on the western side. There are parking stalls that are tucked under on the front half. So if you think of this as a 3-story building, there's apartment units on the back side of the first story, and parking stalls or garage units on the front side of the first story, and then there's apartment units on the second and third stories. So it's kind of like 2.5 of living units and then 1/2 garage in terms of the story breakdown. There are 7 detached garage stalls or garage buildings proposed of 26 stalls each. That's to provide enclosed parking. So on the current concept here, there is no underground parking. It's the tuck unders under the apartment buildings, and then the detached garages. That's what provides the makeup of the required enclosed parking for the site. Then there's a number of surface parking stalls as well. There is a looped trail that comes out, so you can see the wetland boundary line. They avoid the wetland, and then there is a trail that loops up around a stormwater pond in what would be the northeast corner. To note on here also, there is an existing city-owned drainage and utility easement that has a existing sanitary sewer line. It's kind of hard to see on here, but it's this really light dashed line that makes a bunch of jogs through the site. So it kind of runs all the way along the back side of the apartment buildings on the east side. So they have to work around that as well. That's an existing line that's already there with an existing easement, so it's just an impact or a site constraint that they have to work around. The other access shown on here is an emergency access route, and I'll get into some details on that with the next further slide. Currently, as their site lays out, they do meet the parking standard requirement or the parking count requirement, so they are over the minimum requirement of 2.2 stalls per unit, with 1 enclosed, 1 per unit, and then the 0.2 is the guest parking for the units. Some example elevations, I just included a couple on here. There were more in the packet as well. So with a concept, we just asked to show some example buildings that they would attempt to mirror or have it look like knowing that the architecture would be developed with a formal submittal and wouldn't be at this stage of the development, but something where they could typically look like. So that they are expecting to do porches or decks on the units, a variety of building elevations for materials and variations in stepping out the building, both vertically and horizontally, on the different floor makeups to break up some of the facade. These are all typical requirements from the architecture requirements as well, but they are proposing to do those as well. And there is a clubhouse building, so I'll just back up once. There is a clubhouse building with an amenity area between two of the apartment buildings. So they are proposing, you can see the clubhouse in the left image. They will do a clubhouse type facility like that as well. So with the development, as far as what's required or what to move forward, they would have to do a comprehensive plan amendment to staging just to move it from 2020 to current, a rezoning from A1 ag to the GMU1, which is the general mixed use 1 district for this area, and then a preliminary and final plat. As far as the concept goes, they're meeting all the zoning standards so far that staff can identify, so there's at this stage no need for a PUD. They're not asking for any flexibilities, but if down the road they change or modify things and it does become an issue on certain standards like setbacks, building height, things like that, they may ask for a planned unit development, but at this point they are not needing one. So there's 363 units total, so quite a lot of units between the 7 buildings. There's 49 to 54 units in each building, and there is a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom dwelling units through each of those apartment buildings. The net density, just a estimation based on site layout and everything like that, is 14.2 units an acre, so they are meeting the minimum so far, and that number will get refined if the developer chooses to go forward with future submittals. Just some development standards, they're meeting all of these on there. Lot size and lot width, obviously this is bigger lots because it houses multiple apartment buildings, and they are meeting the front, side, rear, and height requirements for the setbacks and the building height. I'm going to go actually, instead of talking about it in text, show you the accesses on the image, just because this is easier to read, I think. So their primary full access is what we call access A. Access B is what they have as a private easement or private drive for emergency vehicle access. Staff is recommending moving that to the west up to where it aligns with the drive aisles and providing a second access in and out of the development. 363 units worth of trips coming out of one access onto territorial is a lot. So staff is recommending either a 3/4 or right in, right out. That will entirely depend on how the county comments on what we're allowed to do. And Jason's been working with them on, they will allow the right in, right out. Whether they'll allow us to upgrade to a 3/4 access is still to be determined after preliminary conversations with them. But moving that over there and having a second full access, it wouldn't be an access that would be for people other than those living in the apartment complex. So it wouldn't be a pass-through or anything like that. It would be intended only to serve those living in the area. And then staff is looking at remaining or having access to a third connection as we're looking at identifying a way to connect it into 113th to the north. So preserving the area for an access. It would not be done with this development as none of the plans are in place, none of the options are there for it now, preserving it for the future to be able to make that connection. So those are the 3 access points, and I think that was easier on here to see those. As far as utilities, there's a 12-inch trunk water main existing along Territorial Road that'll provide service to the site. Additional connection for redundancy should be made. Not exactly known where this is going to be. And then there's the 30-foot wide drainage utility easement that runs through the site north to south that has that existing 12-inch sanitary sewer, so they'll connect off of that for the service to the site. As I mentioned, parking, they're over parked in terms of the code. Over the minimum, so they're not over parked, they're just over the minimum, so they meet the parking standard, which is 363 spaces enclosed, and then 363 for the unit parking, and then additional guest parking of 425 in total. So will meet that as they're shown on their site plan. They could go under, as we might look at 2.2 has been high on past developments, so we may look at potentially being able to not have that much parking on site, and that would free up a little more green space as well. So there is some active space. You notice there's an amenity area, and then there was the walking trail area. So there's those are the two active recreation spaces for the development as a whole. And then it's also being looked at whether they should have a transportation trail along Territorial Road and County Road 81, and that would kind of play into how Territorial Road would get realigned. So we don't know exactly where that would go yet, depending on how the makeup of the transportation improvements take place in that area. Just bringing up landscaping, tree preservation, and screening. Usually with the concept we don't have that, but it's important here because there's going to be a 35-foot wide buffer along the entire boundary along County Road 81. So they'll have to reflect that with the final site design for screening along that area. So we don't have a landscaping plan or a screening or a tree inventory right now, but with a formal development application, we'd expect that. So Planning Commission did review this back in their September meeting, actually. And they had several comments on it. The 4 general categories that they had comments on is they would like to see underground or structured parking versus the tuck under and the detached garage parking. They were looking for better variety in building articulation. Specifically, one of the comments was a lot of the buildings are straight one-dimensional in terms there's no L shapes, there's no jogs in the building, things like that. That was a comment. They also commented on 4 stories or 45 feet is allowed in this district for building height. So they were looking at potentially having 4-story apartment buildings to then decrease the square footage. So if you had 363 units and you remain the same, their idea was making it 4 stories tall, you could then decrease the footprint to allow for more green space. And then also they were just looking to have those improvements on County Road 81 with Territorial and that whole intersection. Then following the Planning Commission meeting, the developer did provide a response to each of those comments, and that letter was included in your packets, and you also got an updated copy of the non-draft version that was then signed by the developer, responding to the comments made to them from the Planning Commission. So the role of the City Council tonight is to review the concept and provide informal comments, so there's no binding action tonight. And the developer is specifically looking for direction and feedback on the comments made by the Planning Commission and notified in their letter. So they are looking for comments and feedback from council on those 4 items. Underground structured parking, the building articulation, the taller apartment structures, and then the improvements on County Road 81. Those are big items that do affect their decision to move forward with a future submittal. So with that, if you have any questions for me or other staff, and the applicant is present tonight to answer any questions as well.
Let's go.
I have several.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with a dumb one. What is a 3/4 movement?
3/4 movement would be a right in, right out. I'll just go back to the access drawing so it'll be easier to see. Would be a right in, so if you're traveling north on County Road 81, you'd have a right into the site, and then you could have a right out of the site traveling, and then southbound you'd have a left turn lane that could go into the site, but you wouldn't allow left turns out of the site.
Okay, so it would add a turn lane.
Yes, on County Road 81. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. I noticed that Stantec is the engineer of record for this project, and Stantec is also who we use for our city engineer. And Amy Schmidt, maybe you could comment on this, but it seems to me like there's an appearance of a conflict with having the city engineer and the architect or the engineers of record being the same company, essentially approving their own work.
Just out of curiosity, we're not affiliated at all with the applicant?
The
Stantec is not
engineer on
retained.
record for this one, or there's no engineering plans at this point, but the engineer that was present at the conversations was from Kimley Horn.
Okay, it was listed in our paperwork that KWA Architects and Stantec Engineering for this project.
I guess I don't know where that reference
No,
was.
we don't have any contractual agreement nor other with the
Well,
with the
then
developer.
no
That's good.
worries on that one.
Covered.
All right. Also, I think I've asked this before, but it's still not clear to me. They need to purchase wetland credits. From who and where does that money go?
I'll let Jason take that one.
I mean, just generally speaking, any impacts to wetlands have to be mitigated. And they're most often done, you buy credits of previously established wetland banks. That is all decided at the time of approvals. as those credits get bought and sold often in different locations. So that wouldn't be identified ahead of time. There is a priority setting of where they are geographically for those mitigations. But again, it would all depend on when the mitigation or the impact and mitigation plan is approved, and then what is available at that time.
And does the city manage that piece of it?
Yes.
Okay.
As the LGU, as for the Wetland Conservation Act enforcement. So the city is responsible for having the applicant fulfill the obligations of the mitigation.
Right. So we collect that money to offset
It goes directly at the closing. So there's an actual formal closing on the purchase of it. But it is all coordinated through the city. You have a representative that coordinates all of this with all of the appropriate agencies, including the closing company.
And the money comes here?
I don't think it goes directly to the city. I think it goes directly to the seller at the closing.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a reason for the question? Is there something else I could?
Just because I don't understand it.
And so
You know,
I
I understand why it needs to happen. I get that. You have an impact on the wetland, and so you need to either mitigate it on your own land, or you need to buy a credit somewhere else.
But
I'm
they're
just
buying
wondering-
these credits from private parties. And that's why the money doesn't
Okay.
necessarily.
That's the
filter.
part I didn't
Okay,
connect with.
so,
is-
even though cities could do it, I mean, the city of Blaine, for example, there was an attempted purchase from their bank.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be a public entity, but it's an outside party.
Okay, but we don't currently do that.
No.
Got it.
We were going to down by the interchange
We-
somewhere,
We've
but.
been trying we've been trying unsuccessfully so far.
Okay, thank you. As far as some comments, I've made this for other versions of this, or other proposals on this property, but it's a long way from a city park, and I would really encourage the developer to include amongst their amenities, things, playground type equipment, things for kids to do. Because there will undoubtedly be kids living in this place, so strongly encourage that. Some of the other things the underground parking, I think that adds a lot of expense to the project, and I worry that it might kill it. And it appears to me like they can get enough parking with the orientation that they have, so I'm actually okay with that. Moving the access, I think moving the access, that piece makes sense to me. What our chances with the county are is sort of yet to be determined, so I would kind of want to see that one play out. That was pretty much what I had.
Is the city being asked for any credits on these intersections?
So the territorial road improvements, that's one where the city's in conversation about how that may happen from a cost share perspective on what may be available from the county as you connect into 81. I don't believe, and Zach and Jason can correct me on this, that there's any funding set aside for that improvement from the city side. So initially we were expecting all of it to happen with the development of this property. However, we have since been, that realignment of territorial may benefit a larger area than just this property. There are multiple undeveloped properties along territorial within, let's say, a quarter, half mile as you move down south on territorial that would also benefit from a realigned, safer intersection with County Road 81. So we're looking at possibilities of how we would fund the intersection improvements from the city side in either doing a possibility, we've talked as a staff level at least about possibility of doing a recapture agreement, which is essentially an agreement that says you're going to benefit from this now, so when your property develops, you're going to pay part of it now and we'll recapture it later. That's a simple way of saying it. It's a technical legal document that you have to do a study area for and everything like that. And then there's always the option of doing a 429, but staff would like to avoid that if at all possible. So we're just looking at ways. But initially we had said this was fully on the developer, but if a project can't develop by having the burden of all that cost, because that's, preliminary cost estimates you know, in Jason's I'm just gonna, when he gave this cost, it was a very big ballpark, but it could be in the range of $1.5 to $2 million, and having a single project bear that cost. We understand
They're not creating all of the traffic. I mean,
correct. So we're starting to look at possible ways to separate that cost out and how we would do that and go about.
Didn't it say in the narrative someplace that we're requiring a traffic study and that?
Yeah, there will be a traffic study, or we
But their
would
portion
require
of that intersection expense would be prorated part based on the traffic study, is that correct?
That's one way we could look at it, is assuming that if this property develops with this traffic study and then the other adjacent properties are expected to develop at their land use guidance and what we could typically expect to see from traffic, maybe a way we could separate out how the cost gets shared around.
Even if we separate it out, we have to fund that up front, right? I mean, other than the 8% they're saying that they might be liable for.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, there is no identified funding currently for that intersection, just so the council's aware.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this
County
comes
will
up
cover
every
it.
time.
The county will cover it, yeah. That sounds good. I like that.
They always come to the table with money for roads, right? Dayton? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we deal with this either, because it comes up all the time. That intersection can handle, at least my belief is that intersection can handle a load like this. And it probably can handle it, but it becomes much more dangerous. And yet, here we are, kind of stuck.
Well, traffic light is gonna fix a lot of it. Or certainly help a lot.
Oh, it would.
Yeah, 33, 33, 33.
Yeah, good luck with that. And I get that other developments, future developments should share, but I don't know how we do that, because we'd still have to put the money in, and then we have to carry the debt until those developments happened, whenever they happen, so.
Yeah, and this is just something we haven't done as a city before, so we're exploring what those options are to
Right.
know what they are. And there's future conversations would have to happen with the formal development application, which staff hasn't had the detailed enough conversations to know up front with the concept, how that would all play out. So it's just looking at what those potential options could be for the future. And if they came forward and, you know, received what, if they wanted to move forward with the development, staff would have future conversations to fully flesh out how that could happen.
So I see that as a concern more than anything else, because I'm with you. I don't
See
know
it as a
how
killer.
we do that. We don't have the money set aside for it.
Right.
That road is already, I would say, an issue in certain places to begin with. Putting more traffic on it doesn't really excite me. Fixing the intersection so it's a 90-degree approach is nice, but I think that's of the issues at the intersection, that's a smaller of the larger one would be the light. If you could get that, that'd be nice and helpful. I agree with David that we think there was a plan that came in last time for this property that had a lot of green space and kind of focused on that a lot more. I think you're right, you're gonna have a lot of kids there. There's not a park, city park nearby. There's some parks around, but none that are close enough to really walk or bike to from this location, especially down territorial. And so that's a significant concern of mine. Unlike David, I'm not a huge fan of the garages. I think every apartment building I've ever seen, you drive around Plymouth, Brooklyn Park, Maple Grove, pick a city that has them, and they always look run down or bad, or they become full of storage, like they become storage units more than garages, in my opinion. And I used to drive by one every day on my way to work, and I worked at General Mills and saw it every day. I was like, yuck. So I'm not a fan of it. There was a great rendering further up in the deck, when you were pointing with the clubhouse. I think that looks super nice. There, the parking's underneath, though.
I was gonna say there's not a garage there.
Yeah, and I think that's why. I think this lot has some issues in general to it. The overall structure, I had a resident reach out to me and say it looks like a prison. We look at the drawing, because it's like this diamond shape with things in the middle. And I can kind of see that with the buildings in the middle and those kind of things if you go back to that rendering. So I see that. I also recognize the fact that it is hard to try to get that many buildings in there and utilize the space fully, given the wetlands and the other utilities that go through it. So I think if it's done nicely in a way, I can get past I don't know what the term the planning commission used, but the lack of L-shaped buildings, whatever term we want to use for that. But for me, I'm not a fan of the garages at all. I think it was 8 to 12% more was what was in the packet from the applicant. It would cost, and in my mind, 8 to 12% is worth it. So, but I'm not the one that has to bear the cost, or I'm the one that pays for it. So it's easier for me to say that, and I recognize that as well. But that's my initial thoughts on this property. I also agree on moving, if we can get B moved further down and reserving C in the future, I think are good. But those are my initial thoughts. Let me check my notes real quick. I think that's everything. I did want to point out that I read the letter from the developer, and it points to a lot of we can't, and it looks like they're trying to point at the city as this is the reason it's failing. Be very clear. I, as an individual, am okay with something going up here. I think where nothing that's going to go here is going to be exactly what everyone wants, because you never appease everyone. But I think I'm going to use negotiation should be in play here. The letter I read was kind of a no. So that'd be my other thought is we need to work with developers, want to work with the city because we want to work with developers. And so I get worried when it's like it's all the city's fault if we can't get this done. And I'm putting my own spin on what was said. Those are not the words that were in the letter, just to be clear, but that's kind of how I interpreted the words that were on there. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I also didn't. Those garages, I think even this came up in the planning commission, that those garages tend to fall apart because it's hard to maintain something that isn't living space, and it's just looked at as, so I don't know, they tend to get run down, but they're overparked. Is that, I know it seems like just over the developers over the last 4 or 5 years have said our parking standards are too high, and this one's over our standard. So maybe there's some room to remove some of those. I don't know, but some of the parking, it sounds like, is on the ground floor of some of the facility, or some of the buildings. It'd be nice
so
to
each
get
of
more
the-
of that in there.
Where it accesses the drive aisle.
Is it a groundwater problem, or what's?
I think it's just more, and this is more coming from the developer because I don't do the cost part of it, but when you move to an underground parking, it's structure versus stick built. So there's just a cost with the concrete versus stick built.
There's got to be some water issues though, right? Because along 81 there's a wetland there right now.
They've done some
Right.
preliminary soil
Yeah.
borings. I don't know if they've done the evaluation of where the groundwater
Yeah.
level is and if it works.
My guess it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, it might be.
The other thing was, the park fees in there are incorrect, and it sounds like, I kind of read between the lines too in that letter that any bump in the road's going to cause a problem here, and I think that's going to be a big bump. So I think those should probably be looked at fairly quickly because there's significant errors in there. I think that was it. Gary, you had something in the letter. What was you want to explain that?
The garage issue, 24 feet.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, my concern is when apparatus respond, and as a few of you indicated, these become, as I've seen throughout my career as well, dilapidated and tend to catch on fire fairly easily because of storage. But my bigger concern with that from a fire response is I don't have the ability to make 90s between that. So if I had made a right, from one to the next, I don't really have that opportunity, well, based on length of apparatus and the close proximity to one another. So I believe that's what you're referring to, Mayor.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, that would have to be certainly addressed as a safety issue for sure. And then I'll agree with what Matt was saying. In the letter, it it seems to be that there's a lot of cost. We can't do this, we can't do that. I guess in my eyes, if you're gonna build a building, you gotta pay the piper, and that's just the way it is, so. To me, some of the fees gotta be addressed, certainly. Or at least, hopefully, they're not waived out of there.
Yeah, so that was kind of I guess it was a question I was gonna, so if they did do some of the road work, or all of the road work, and then we compensated with fees, how does that work? I mean, because those fees are designed to go into a fee bucket.
Yeah.
So-
Basically, you're just canceling them out by giving up the fee.
Because the cost would be a transportation or a street network infrastructure cost and not a sewer or water cost, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to waive and or credit any of those fees because they're not associated with the improvement. So if they were doing a sewer pipe improvement, we could credit SAC fees or sewer fees. We also can't credit ones that don't go to us, so we can't credit back ones that would be going to Maple Grove for the connection fees and things
Yep.
like that. So there really isn't an opportunity to credit any of the fees for the transportation work done on territorial. Same because we can't assign or credit park dedication fees for something that's not a park
Right.
improvement. So none of those fees are actually tied to a transportation.
So reimbursement from them would have to somehow come out of a general fund bucket.
Or pavement management fund bucket.
Right.
Yep.
Street
Yeah.
bucket.
Some sort of street
Yeah.
dollars, yeah.
Big enough
But
bucket
because
for
the
that.
water would be going towards the water fund and the sewer would be going
Right.
towards the sewer fund, those aren't fees we could credit or waive
Yep.
as part of the transportation improvements.
And that's a legal thing, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's
this
just not
came up once
associated.
before, about 4 years ago, and
Yeah, it's also an accounting thing too. I mean, we can't spend money out of the water fund to fix the road
Yeah,
down here in Salt
it makes
Pine
sense.
Lake. I mean, you can't, that's,
Yep.
the idea is to allocate the dollars that you need in that fund for that exact fund usage. We can move the funds around it by transfer again, but again.
temporary transfer or something.
Yeah, so
But-
interfund loan or something, we could do that. But again, it has to be documented and approved by council and so on and so forth.
It'd have to be a fairly quick payment schedule.
Correct, that would be the idea, is that our water fund is our healthiest fund, however, it's the one that's most needed because we have the
Right.
most need in the water fund as well. So that's why it's as healthy as it is.
Okay.
I
Anybody?
certainly have no issues if we can get something done with the traffic light to have the city partake in that, so.
In the traffic light, but not the intersection,
Absolutely.
correct?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. To me, it's imperative that we get a light there.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know if that intersection can handle a lot more traffic without a light there. It's already an iffy intersection, in my opinion. But
Is that the main driver for moving territorial down farther? You know, I don't know, for myself, I don't know what the big advantage of going, getting from 45 degrees to 90 degrees or whatever that is. Is a big enough driver to do it, but is it because of the stacking space and stuff that?
Yeah, it's just a safer approach as approaching vehicles are not skewed and they don't come around the corner just to hit it. Nice here that it's not a through intersection, so it's actually, this is designed far less than what's typical. Usually you aim for a minimum of about a 300-foot straight-on approach. This is more like 160. We felt comfortable with that, just being that there's not through traffic here. So people are going to be slowing down because everybody coming is turning. So that does help. But yes, the perpendicular intersection is a much safer, makes it easier for sight lines and see in different directions.
How much further east is this intersection as compared to Dayton Parkway?
The distance,
Between the territorial intersection and where Dayton Parkway would be to the west of that? What's the distance between that?
I've measured this a bunch of times and I don't remember what it is.
Sorry to ask a redundant question.
No, I think I think it's over half-mile spacing,
Okay.
Yeah, I
which
was
is
gonna say,
nice.
it's gotta be a couple
Pretty
thousand.
good.
Okay.
So that was part of the reason for this shift as well. This puts it closer to the middle. I mean, this is, I think it's real close to a quarter mile to that, which is the desired spacing. But again, this gives you a little more spacing here without getting any closer to the other intersection.
What's practice on sites that are laid out like this for like snow removal? Do they like leave the cars parked outside, you just work around them, or?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I
Because
think
they're
about
tight.
something like that, and then you're starting to stack all these cars if it's their policy to remove them, get them out of the site to do that. Like, where do they go? That would be more of a driver towards the underground parking for me then.
I'm gonna make the assumption that these are probably low areas or grass areas, allowing to pile the snow, but again, you have barricades on many of the sides, so I don't know if that's practical or not.
And you mentioned that the county's okay with right in, right out, but not the three-quarter, or they haven't.
Preliminary discussions, the right in, right out seems to have support for approval. As of now, they are not agreeable to a three-quarter. I continue to work with them and plead for a three-quarter, and the reason being, just quickly, if the users are coming off of the interchange especially, so they're coming southbound on 81, if all of these users need to turn left here
Yep.
and get left there, this leg is short, and the risk of backups onto 81.
Higher.
That would bind itself up
Intercept those
real quick.
flows, if you will, so the users can come in. Similarly, even northbound traffic, instead of coming in here and driving to the north end, would still be a benefit to use this one to come in. So it's just to relieve pressure on that intersection is the thought, but the county does not agree with that, so.
What are the odds of getting C in place? Because as I look at the map, that's a much more, like, appropriate, of all the exit entrances, that seems like the most appropriate one from making this doable without putting costs on the applicant.
It's a less direct route, certainly,
Oh, yeah.
than A.
Down 113th there.
And there doesn't come without challenges, but it would be a valuable connection, I would say, if it could be made. Additionally, as the city develops to the north, just to have that direct connection there, say there is a built-up city center for local support of residents or.
Because
users, that
113th
would be a
connects
quicker
right to
route.
Dayton Parkway anyway, so if you're using 94 to get to work or whatever, that seems like a much better, safer connection route anyways.
Yeah, it's a little bit further, but
Yeah.
safer, yes.
Yeah, I mean-
And not directly to it.
Might take 3 extra minutes, but I'll take the 3 extra minutes over risking my life crossing 81.
There are some challenges. We'd be crossing 2 private properties, if you
Okay.
will, and there's some significant wetlands and some trees
Okay.
and stuff.
I didn't
Could
know.
certainly be managed, so we've looked at it and considered even
Done stuff like
using
that.
that as the preferred.
Yeah.
But it comes with challenges.
Would that be cheaper than A?
Oh, to have that as a primary, I guess
Yeah.
we didn't even run through that. It's a good question.
Again, I don't want
would
the
say
city to be
probably
here to say
comparable.
no, I'd rather pose options and let
Sure.
parties that be figure it out. I'm open to things, I just, yeah.
That one might be more time sensitive just because of the connection that's in place currently with the 113th. Once 113th is rerouted up to the roundabout, I think that would be a lot easier tolerated
Okay.
by the additional traffic.
Any more for
I don't
staff?
think I have anything else. I agree with the right in, right out on the west edge for sure. And a matter of fact, I'd give up on the conversation of the three-quarter if you can get the traffic light.
Yeah, hopefully they're not dependent on each other. I would hope they're exclusive, but,
Oh, with the county, nothing shocks me.
Anybody have any questions for the developer? Are they? would assume
They're
they're-
present if you want to have them come up and speak at all.
Doesn't sound like there's any questions. If you want to come up and say anything, or?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Patrick. I'm with Enclave 1660 South Highway 100 in St. Louis Park. Thank you for the opportunity to connect again. It's been since the moratorium discussion was the last time I connected with you. Appreciate all the feedback. Heard a handful of things. I'm happy to try to provide some color or additional responses, but I don't want to interject where you don't want me to. I'm here to answer questions and add additional comments. I do have comments on a handful of things, but I want to be respectful of your process and what you want to hear.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like we have any questions, so go ahead and, you have some comments? or-
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
If I may, I'm referring to the map that's on the screen here. Just want to identify a few things. As these projects have different touch points with different groups, city staff, applications to the city, planning commission, there's comments, requests made, lists of, updates to make to projects that when we're in front of you right now discussing 3 or 4 things, don't make the list of the things that we've said yes to or have done or have tried to complete. So I just want to identify some things that, just even the discussion tonight, for example, that we're willing to do, willing to space out the garages, willing to meet the standards that the fire department's looking for, willing to add connection to the C location there, willing to shift B down to the left, willing to add the trail along the road there, willing to dress up the buildings more within the confines of the general footprints that they're in now, willing to bounce the buildings back and forth so it's not a straight line or a straight plane of the buildings that you're looking at, willing to bring forward a colored site plan that shows the amount of green space. I think these black and white plans don't do a good job of conveying the level of green space. You look at this overall site here, the amount of green that is here compared to most developments we work on or are familiar with is drastically higher. Obviously, there's natural reasons why here. As far as levels of water and geotech, we don't have full-blown geotech yet on this site. There's some preliminary work that's been done by previous developers. We know the water table's high. But to be completely transparent, that doesn't preclude you from being able to do underground parking. You can do it. It's physically possible. We've done it on sites like this in the past. So it is possible. Because the water table is high enough and there's a lot of percolated soils, we have identified that we will need active pump systems underneath the garages to make sure they're not getting wet and water isn't percolating through. But as mentioned by staff, that's not the material reason why we could or could not do structured parking. It's the issue is that it's structured parking. There's a cost associated with it. To be frank, whether it's in Dayton or most communities right now, it's very difficult to do structured parking in any outer ring suburb just because of the economics and where we're at with interest rates. It's just a reality of where we're at right now. We've gone back and forth with staff twice, and there's been a handful of letters that have been put together with suggestions to our plans. The Planning Commission mentioned many more comments beyond the 3 or 4 that are mentioned in our letter. We've been able to say yes to every one of those things. So there's a very long list of yeses with 3 or 4 no's. And the reason why we wanted to bring up those 3 or 4 no's or issues, we just wanted you to know what they are. Being in your side of the table, just so you're aware, these are the challenges that we have. I know we're the 3rd developer to come forward on this project. I would imagine if we were to not be able to move forward, the next developer will have those same issues, is my guess. So it's just a way of communicating and being clear. Sorry that the context wasn't totally there. It wasn't meant to be a brass or negative letter. It was just meant to be open and honest and put the cards on the table so you know the challenges we're dealing with. That way, if we don't move forward, you guys know what those challenges were. So it's just meant to be transparency. Other notes I had written down. If I didn't say it, willing to add a tot lot park, we think that's a great idea. And some of the changes that I mentioned, we will allow more green space. I think a lot of the comments that we've heard and some shifting of the site plan would require either a removal of one building or the reduction of the size of all buildings to create a little bit more green space circulation areas for some of the things that people have mentioned. On the funding side of things and the intersections, I understand and respect how difficult that discussion is and probably not an easy ability to give a clear answer right now. It probably requires a higher level policy discussion. I don't know, I had the numbers at one point, but I know that this project generates many millions of dollars of development fees, not suggesting that the city would agree to use that or not, but I do, if it wasn't conveyed, we'd be willing to construct that intersection, that new territorial intersection, upfront fund that intersection. Originally, we understood that staff wanted us to do the design and just manage the whole thing. We were willing and able to do that. We were just looking for reimbursement of whatever wasn't our pro rata share of the development fees. So again, difficult, understand that's a huge thing to unwrap, but I just want to identify we're willing to take on the work, willing to upfront fund it, willing to get it done, and come up with a funding source per se, but it's obviously a credited scenario. What else did I want to mention here? I think those are my high-level comments. The property owner is here as well. I just wanted to identify that in case any dialogue was appropriate there. That's all I have. I appreciate the opportunity to connect, and whether it's this project or another project, we love Dayton, and I hope that we get to work with you now or in the future. So really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no further comments. There's no action on the item, so.
I wanted to make just one other comment, and it's really not about the development details at all, but I do appreciate that this developer intends to develop, build, and manage the project long-term. I think that is the kind of operation I'd like to see in Dayton rather than somebody just building it and spinning it. So I feel like that's a plus.
All right. On to item J.
Screw it? Okay. We'll take it in a second.
Your slides are in that PowerPoint, John.
Oh,
I moved them over.
okay. In the same one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I was going to drop the PDF quick. So I just got out of the thing I wanted to be in.
Nope. PowerPoint at the bottom.
Oh. This is like a no-brainer that I thought too hard of.
Happens to the best of us. We've all been there. You're just lucky enough to be doing it while it's being recorded, so that makes it all the more pressure, right?
There you go. Okay.
And then just arrow down.
Thank you. Okay, so this is part of it. There's 3 applications with this. So the first item should back up. So this is Dayton Field's 4th edition. There's 3 applications. The first is a preliminary plat. The second is a site plan review, and then we have a conditional use permit for outdoor storage. So this project is located on West French Lake Road and 121st Avenue, right here. Critical issues with this, and it 3 applications. There's a lot of details with this, but I'm going to focus on the 2 critical issues, which is a request for a reduction in landscape requirements, as well as the screening for outdoor storage. And I'll get to these towards the end of this slide. For the preliminary plat, the request is to subdivide Outlot B of Dayton Field 2nd Edition into 2 lots. We have Lot 1 and then Lot 2. So Lot 1 is on the north side. Lot 1 will be for QT Commercial, which is a roofing company based out of Brooklyn Park that will be relocating here. Lot 2 is J&A Glass, which is an installer for glass and mirrors, which will be relocating here from Rogers. With the preliminary plat, there's not really too much concern that staff has. The site does have quite a bit of topography. There's wetlands on Lot 1 along the existing or the western property line, as well as in between Lot 1 and Lot 2. You should add one thing that's a little unique about it. Well, a couple things that are unique about it. One is it's right across the street from there we go, French Lake, and then just the west of the property in this wooded area is owned by the mobile home park, which had been planned for an expansion. As far as I know, it's still planned for an expansion. But
That's still going? They just haven't.
There's no, so I understand that the properties or the mobile home park has been sold, and I'm not aware of any conversations we've had with the new owner. This is a street view of Lot 2 for J&A Glass. So the area that's highlighted in yellow would be the buildable area of where that facility would be located. The building is, I believe it's 35 feet tall. It's tip-up panels. Here in the rendering on the left side, it's 2 stories tall. I believe right now the building is just a shell. So however it's designed interior-wise is yet to be decided. Access will be onto West French Lake Road. This is Lot 1. So the buildable area is highlighted in yellow. It is a fairly larger lot than Lot 2. Architecturally, we have renderings on the left side, so there's going to be some resemblance between both projects. So both buildings are going to be tip-up panels. QT Commercial will have red highlights, and then J&A Glass will have blue. So, and both will appear as essentially a large warehouse with a 2-story office attached to it. Outside storage. So outside storage does require a conditional use. The applicant is proposing to use the area that's highlighted in yellow. The outside storage area will be fenced with 8-foot tall chain link fence with slats. They are also asking for a certain area along. I don't want to move this so much. Oh, okay. Along, I'm going to call it the southeast property line, where heights would be up to 16 feet tall. So this would be for insulation board. So all the construction material, or the material that would be stored there is going to be construction material. So whether it's different types of insulation, mostly in also concrete block and some lumber. Okay. So the 2 critical issues, and this was most of the discussion at the Planning Commission. So the first item is a reduction in landscape materials. So this was specific to Lot 1 for QT Commercial. The reasoning for the request in reduction was that this is a large lot with a lot of open space. And so 67% of the lot coverage is open space or green area. The Planning Commission was agreeable to reduce it by up to 15%. And so the request from the developer was between 8 and 14%, depending on the type of landscaping material. So in our city code, we require a certain number of trees and shrubs, or different types of trees and shrubs based on the amount of open space or lot area. And so the bigger the lot, the smaller the building, the more landscaping you need. So that was kind of the reason for the request and reduction. As far as so landscaping kind of has 2 purposes. It makes the property look nice. It also provides screening for things you don't want to look at, whether it's parking or in this case it's outside storage. The map on the right is really the concern for screening. The solid line here is existing trees that will stay. The dashed line is trees that would be added to screen the outside storage area from West French Lake Road. So as mentioned earlier, the property of the west is the planned expansion of the mobile home park. There's some concern of wanting to screen the outside storage from the mobile home park. It's reasonable to believe that those existing trees are going to provide screening. The distance from the property line to the edge of the trees line is about 80 feet, so it's fairly significant. The area on the left, this is the original landscaping plan, and the red X's are a demonstration of those landscaping materials that would be removed if landscaping is reduced by up to 15%. With that, we have the applicant here, and either myself or they would be happy to answer any questions.
So I'm a little bit unclear on the landscaping piece. We've got that range 8 to 14%, but then in the CUP document it says 15%. So,
yeah, so
which is it?
So with the developer requests a reduction of up to 15%. In our ordinance, we require a certain number of overstory trees, a certain number of coniferous trees, a certain number of ornamental trees, and shrubs. So you've got 4 different planting materials. Some of those materials are reduced by 8%, others are reduced by 14%. So it's not a, you know,
And
we're
that's
going to
gonna be-
reduce the total number of landscaping by 15%. It varies. So if the code requires you to plant 100 pine trees versus, 50 oak trees, I might only want to plant, 12 pine trees and 5 oak trees.
Are you
So
saying
the numbers don't?
staff and the applicant kind of got together and figured out what could be?
It is.
Because I'm okay
It's-
with it, but
I'm
I'm just,
okay with their reduction too. I mean, to an extent, I think some of the landscaping, it's overkill.
sometimes it does seem like it.
There's a lot
Yeah,
of green
I
on
just-
this property to begin
It
with.
just
Yeah.
Right.
doesn't seem that clear to me. I understand what you're saying. And I certainly understand why, or agree that the landscaping requirement can be reduced. That's not where I'm trying to go with it.
Yeah,
It just
I
seems
was
like
kinda
we're
confused by that, too.
overcomplicating it here. We're gonna take away 4 viburnums and we're gonna plant 2 less river birch or
Right.
something,
Yep.
and so you're gonna go through those categories, and why can't we just say 15% and be done with it?
It's more complicated. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. So, like, for instance, I think the shrubs were reducing significantly. So, the shrubs might be,
Because it was dry anyways.
so within the code, there's 4 different types of landscaping that are required, and the developers needs to meet 3 of those. Which 3, it's up to them. So, I will say the city code is much more complicated, probably than it needs to be, and I'm trying not to make it more so by during this presentation. I guess.
All right,
Yeah.
well, if you understand it, then I guess that's fine. I'm not trying to make an issue out of it. I just couldn't follow the 3 different numbers.
What was the other concern?
The screening for the outdoor storage.
Yeah, I did, I mean, so the planning commission kind of laid out, I thought they did a good job of, and the applicant, I think, kind of agreed where that stacking could go up to 16, where it needed to drop down, but the fact of the matter is, nobody's gonna see this stuff anyways, but, I mean, given where it's at. So, I'm okay with
I
that.
would guess, too, that storage is pretty transient,
Yeah,
that
it
they
sounded
don't
like it.
want to, 1 million board feet or however that stuff gets measured sitting around, and it seems to me from construction projects I've been involved with, the roofers want to get that stuff on site as fast as they possibly can. So it's not going to be sitting around there for years.
So I'm fine with the landscaping, the outdoor storage. I watched the planning commission meeting, it makes sense to me. My only concern is, we talked about like the foam insulation boards. Those are very light and oftentimes the wind takes them away. So I just want to be mindful of this is an IUP, correct?
Conditional use
Okay,
permit.
CUP. So,
Runs with the property.
yeah, so I think as long as we aren't getting things blowing away and all of a sudden we see a huge increase in foam board in the lake or something like that, I'm okay with it. And if we do, we can address it under the CUP. So I'm good with that. That's my only concern, if there's lightweight things blowing away. But I'm gonna guess lumber's not an issue. I just think of like those purple foam boards they use for insulation.
Yeah.
I see those flying around my neighborhood every now and then from the neighboring neighborhood. So those are the kind of things that worry a little bit
I think
about.
these things
Roofing,
will be packed pretty good.
It's free material.
Roofing insulation I've seen for commercial buildings is pretty thick. It's not like we grab at Home Depot.
Right.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, I think. I think this property also serves as like a trail access for the Northwest Snowmobile Trail Club. I think if they could work with the group to kind of keep access, because this is, I believe, their access to get over to Corcoran as well. So if there's any way that could work out, just to keep the trails and the accesses for our parks and trails and stuff in the city, because I know that it connects right to Three Rivers, and we've got miles of trails there for snowmobilers in the area. So
Is it on a property edge, or I don't remember where? the trail is.
when I saw this, I was like, hey, I think to get to Quick Trip,
I-
that's how I
yeah.
got through there. So, and it was on a marked trail. So if they could just work with them, I'm not 100% sure where it is, but it's looked like that location.
Mayor Council, that trail runs technically on the east side of the Lot 2, which would be the J&A Glass, and then it goes basically directly west behind MTL and then through MTL's property down towards Quick Trip. So, unfortunately, it does do this, but it's a good comment. I appreciate that.
Anything else?
Applicant for that lot here, they want to speak to that at all, for lot 2?
J&A Glass is the one.
Nick Jude, owner of J&A Glass, and I think that snowmobile trail does cut through my lot, and I'd be open to somehow accommodating that somehow, some way, as an active snowmobiler and employees that do the same, right? So,
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need, we can do all these in one fell swoop, is that right? Any reason we can't?
Sure, yeah.
I'll motion
Okay.
that we move forward with this as it's presented to us today.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more comments? So that would be,
I'm okay with the reduction in the landscaping and the outdoor storage, given the feedback we received.
this would be the CUP and preliminary plat for conditional use permit and the site plan reviews.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any more comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Item K. Overlook Road. Who's got that? Kevin? Oh, okay.
Back in time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Sorry for being out there. So tonight before you have the River Overlook preliminary and final plat. The applicant on this one is Ramsey Holdings LLC. It's not highlighted on the map, but it's this larger lot on the corner of Pine View and Overlook. It's to create one new lot from the existing 1.77 acre lot. It is guided existing sewer low density residential in the comp plan and zoned R1 single family district with an overlay. So the MRCCA, which is the Minnesota River Critical Corridor Area Overlay District, it is classified as a river neighborhood overlay under that ordinance, and it is in the current use of staging area. There is sanitary and water service to the area on Overlook. So the preliminary plat, the existing home is on the eastern portion of the property. So on the right side of the screen, there's the existing home. You can see hashing indicating Overlook Road and the driveway up to their property, then the existing home in the U shape, and then there is a deck on the northeast corner, and then the hatch mark you see in the center is the bluff, or where there was a bluff identified. So there's a pretty great slope change in this area, and the squarish section was identified as a bluff based on the criteria in both the Shoreland Ordinance and the Minnesota River Critical Corridor Area Overlay Ordinance. And then the two lines you see from it are the buffer and setback. So with a bluff, there is a buffer from the top and the bottom of the bluff, and then a setback from the top and the bottom of the bluff as well. They're only showing it from the top of the bluff, just because the bottom of the bluff doesn't impact anything. There's nothing back there. So they are proposing to create a new lot on the western portion of the existing lot, essentially splitting the lot into two, east and west. Both lots meet or exceed all minimum lot requirements, so lot width, lot size, all the setbacks they can meet. As far as the bluff setback and the home setback from the front, they'll need to orient the home. They showed a building pad on here. With a building permit, they'll need to locate the home within that building pad such that it meets the setback. So it has the possibility to. They didn't show the building at this time because they didn't have the building with architecture done to know the building shape, to be able to orient, left, right, top, bottom on the site, or north, south, east, west. So they'll have to do that with a building permit, but they have the possibility to meet all the setbacks with that. So it is a buildable lot, is basically what we've established with that. So then the final plat is much cleaner because you don't show all the other stuff on it. So it creates one new lot. With a final plat, we do take water and sewer connection fees. With this, they're not getting a new connection, so they aren't required to pay the new, the trunk charges, but they are required the connection charges that come with building permit, and then park dedication fees. So they will be required to pay those three, but they won't be required to pay the trunk fees because the trunk, sanitary sewer are already there, and the water. So Planning Commission did review this and recommended approval as drafted by staff with the 3 conditions. And then just to mention, because this is in the Minnesota River Critical Corridor Area Overlay, we are required to send notice to the DNR and the National Park Service, which we did, and we did not, we received either no response or we have no comments at this time from those 2 agencies. So they have no issue with this moving forward. The National Park Service just did ask us to notify them of building plans when the building permit came in. So with that, staff does recommend approval of Resolution 38-2023, which would be approving the preliminary and final plat.
All right, I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just have a couple comments. I'm okay with it. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to preserve the bluff and the tree line there. I think that's really important. And when I don't know if it was on the drawings, there's a lot of lines on there or not, but if there's a driveway located somewhere, I definitely don't want the driveway to come out into the freeway intersection. I prefer it further to the east.
They do have to maintain a distance from the intersection.
Okay, perfect.
For the driveway, yep.
Thank you.
As well as they are not allowed to impact the bluff. There's
Perfect.
a buffer from that they'll have to maintain with any grading operations or clearing operations.
Oh, perfect.
That it? Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. So now we are on to item L, turn lanes.
I don't see.
Give it those 2 arrows. You need just the arrow.
That's what I was looking for. I was hitting the wrong ones. We're looking at turn lanes at the Elsie Stevens Park on River Road tonight.
Okay.
So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the location, but it's located on the north side of River Road, between the River Road and the river, just north of the River Hills development as shown on the drawing.
A river.
The Mississippi River. Just a little background, I'm sure most are familiar, but just to provide some info on the site. The Elsie Stevens property was acquired for the purpose of constructing a city park some time ago. The improvements have been being constructed in phases throughout the park, expected to continue to develop in upcoming years. The park use is increasing. This includes both recreational users as well as becoming a host site for some larger organized events such as movies in the park and other events. So there's been voiced concern about the safety just for users entering the park and the desire for turn lanes to accommodate those. So it'd be turn lanes on the county road of River Road. So recommended next step would be to do a preliminary design for the turn lanes, which would include feasibility study just to make sure that they can in fact be built in there, and then to refine the cost estimate so there's a strong idea of what the cost might be for construction. So just to share the extent of the project, the turn lanes take a lot of space, and that's because you have to make the turn lanes themselves, and then there's long tapers to get back onto the normal traffic route. So what's shown here is the typical distances in each direction of what would be constructed. We think we'll be able to shorten this slightly, but how much will be dependent on the county's approval for it. So just a little bit of info on timeline and the engineering costs associated. Again, we broke this into 4 stages just because we would like to bring back to council at the end of each of these stages. So we did split the design between preliminary and final, because if we look at this, there are some challenges that have been identified. If those challenges become too costly, we may want to come back and just present that so there's an opportunity to not continue spending money on it. If things look positive, then we would move into a final design, and then if, again, things check out, we would bid and construct early in the spring. One important one on this is Hennepin County has, it's a millet overlay project planned for 2024 along the entire stretch of River Road from the junction of Brockton Lane all the way to the Champlin border. That's planned for 2024. So they do put a 5-year moratorium in place. So once they do that project, they say they're not going to permit any projects other than emergency situations to do any improvements for a 5-year period. So we would either need to move quickly and get this done before their project next summer, or it would be delayed until 2029.
Why do they care?
So you can tie it right into
I was
it.
gonna say, could it be in lieu with, like their project?
Well, what we will, and we've already we've been in contact
Sure.
with the county. What we would like to do is attempt to time it such that we can leave some of the paving to them, because they would be milling anyway. So
Right.
if we can just leave, call it the last 1.5 or 2 inches off and have them do it for some
The final
savings.
course or
we'll do
whatever,
that.
yeah.
We'll have to see what they allow
Okay.
at the time and how the timing pans out. They have not come out with a actual schedule
Okay.
for their project yet. They have a
3 days before
timeline.
it starts.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We hope they'll get notice. We actually have a call with them next week, I think, or maybe the following, but.
Yeah, I think it's 2 weeks from now.
So, yeah, just to note that. So our recommendation, if council chooses to move forward, is to approve the proposal and then authorize the preliminary design. We'd hope we'd have some at least good handle on what things would be needed in the December meeting, so we'd be back in front of you in December.
And the idea, Jason, on cost is, I see here we got 600, but there's 200 coming from 152nd. So
Yeah.
this is gonna cost about 400 grand is what we think.
No, we're thinking 600. It could be more. That's part of the feasibility study. I won't get into a lot of detail, but there's a culvert not far from this, and the culvert's not long enough to support it, and there's guardrail in place.
Oh.
So if we can get by and manage to only widen one way, then we cut those costs way down. If we have to widen both ways, it becomes much more expensive. And if we have to acquire any land that's not already owned by the city, so if we have to move south enough, there'll be land acquisition costs. And that's why I'm a little cautious to say we can hit a cost
Hit the mark.
estimate.
So it's gonna be anywhere from 600 to $1 million.
I sure hope it's not $1 million, but
Well,
Could you put the map back on there? So are we talking about turn lanes, right turn lanes for both entrances and then left for just that one, or what?
just the main entrance. My understanding is this would be gated during normal situations and then opened for larger events. And then
Okay.
I assume at the larger events, there would probably even be traffic control in place.
Okay.
So it would be just at this access, and the thought is to do both. We expect probably, at least for some amount of time, more of the users to come from the east. So the right turn lane would be a big benefit, and of course, the left turn lane is the one that really creates the safety, because they can sit and wait longer to turn. So both are important, though we would like to look at the feasibility, depending on what the costs do, of potentially only doing one of the two.
Okay. And right now, we're pretty sure we have enough right away, right now.
no idea.
Probably not, but we'd be going to what the city already owns.
Oh, through the, okay.
Our thought is, let's see if we can just widen north and accomplish this. And we're only extending one side of the culvert, and we're only dealing with one guardrail, and we
So-
don't have to acquire additional property.
This kind of doesn't have much to do with this, but the fact that that's parkland, how do we dedicate right away out of parkland?
You would basically just parcel off a piece of it. You would just create a tract, and then that would be dedicated to the public, or you could place a highway easement over it for road purposes.
Okay, I'll ask it in an email. It has nothing to do with this, but, okay.
I understand what you're asking.
So is any, I mean, I understand we don't know the total until you get through the feasibility piece of it. But is this all pavement money, or is any portion of this related to park improvement?
We could probably look at it to be possibly looking at a park improvement, depending on what it would be doing to the park. But mostly it's looked at, right now, it's all budgeted for in the pavement management fund. That is where it's currently budgeted for. Not saying that we couldn't do it. I think we'd have to look at some legal things with Amy to figure out if it's worthwhile, because the park dedication fees are very sensitive of what they can and can't be used for. And so it's what are we gaining to the park by adding those turn lanes and that.
Safety.
I don't know, I'll work with this.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out.
TBD.
Yeah.
Don't disagree with it, though.
Right.
If we can use some funding from other sources, we most certainly will look at it.
ADA component to this somehow?
Sure, maybe 80, that might work.
All right, I need a motion and a second.
I'll make
You
a
go
mo-
back one, sorry. So
On this one?
right now, we're motioning for the preliminary design phase, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I got.
Indirectly, you're motioning for all of it, but
Still say.
But only authorizing the one.
Right, correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Still an option. So, I'll make a motion.
I'll even second.
Okay, you got Travis and
It's gonna
Scott.
happen, so it does.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right.
And then we'll move right, or did you, sorry, do you want to?
M? Yep.
Move right into the well house number 5. This is a little bit of a, just a refresher. Well 5 is located also in the River Hills development, as shown on the drawing. Sorry, River Walk, immediately west of River Hills. Thank you. So just another quick background on this one. The site, the location was coordinated with the development. One of the lots, or there was actually 2 of the lots, were conveyed to the city for purposes of supporting this well and well house. Test well was completed and the site determined viable. The production well was then drilled and tested and is complete as we talked today. And just a side note, you've probably heard, but it tested, no pun intended, very well. It was very high producing well, which was great news. So very excited about that.
So we can sell more water. Get that cost down.
Yeah, I think it's even slightly higher than 4. Well, it was about, I think that was about 1,300, so it was a good turnout. And in the meantime, the water treatment, as council is well aware, project was approved, which did change the scope of the well house. It means we can forego the chemical treatment, the injection and the chemical treatment within the well house itself. So the next step of this would be to design the well house to support the project. So just a little bit more detail on the site. Just the red X on the left is where the site exists within the Riverwalk development, again, immediately west of River Hills. I'll say the sketch in the middle is just a little bit closer view of the site. The well's located generally right in the center of it, between the road to the east and the wetland. The building will obviously enclose the well along with all the equipment to support it. And then just a very preliminary look we took on the layout of the well house, just to try to give a general feel of how big this thing might be or what might be entailed with it. Dimensions are going to be tough to read on there. It's about 13 by 21 feet is what's showing on here.
How big is 4 for reference?
Oh, shoot.
Is this like half the size of 4, or is this like just for reference?
It's probably 2/3 of it, would be my guess. Is it?
Yeah, it'd be fat.
Because the only
Yeah,
thing
I
you
should've
don't
checked
have is
that.
the chemical mixing room really right off of it. Like 4 has that in it, but this
Yeah,
one
4
won't.
has that in
So-
It has chemical treatment
Yeah.
and then a little bit of storage in there as
Yeah.
well. And then it's got the lean-to on the side for the park feature that was included with it.
And does the generator from 4 supplies power for emergency power for this well as well?
There would be an additional.
There would be another generator.
Generator for this one as well.
Is that already budgeted for, the generator for this one?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Mayor Council, no.
So that puts the building at how much of this? The 750, what's the building cost then?
Well, we have to go through the design to get a better cost estimate on it. The preliminary numbers, based on the well 4 comparables, it was approaching like 1.2 million. With it, just because, well, a couple reasons, because there's not it's not scaled down as much as what it was once thought might be acceptable. So it can't really be like well 3 because it produces more water.
Yep.
And there's more components that need to go with that. what was the other point I was
The house.
gonna-
Is really what I'm talking about, right? I mean, that's what
Oh,
we're talking.
and then the inflation on these costs have skyrocketed, as was witnessed with the treatment facility as well.
1.5.
That started on a $4
Just
million.
scales.
And again, we'll work with Public Works to scale back and see, you know, how small can we make it, where can we cut? I mean, another option, and I'd be surprised if Public Works supported it, but we could set it up for a future permanent generator and just plan to support it with a portable in the time being. That might be some way to at least defer costs.
Don't we have that giant portable one at Public Works now?
Yeah, we do have a couple of portable generators. We've been trying to move away to have something on the critical infrastructure that's there all the time, rather than having to respond, in the
But
middle of
now that
summer.
we've got 3 wells on this thing, it seems like we should be able to do some risk mitigation just by the fact that we have 3 wells. I know we don't want to use 2 because it's got problems, but
Yeah.
Again, yeah, it could be, so in
not
essence,
treated.
this creates a redundant well, if you will.
yeah.
So,
to some extent.
and that's why, maybe the deferred improvements for those
Okay.
additional costs would be acceptable. Once you're relying on all 3, I would be a little more concerned
Yeah,
about that.
well, then
but
we'll
in
be
the
looking at a
meantime-
4th.
Right.
And that time we won't forget the building of the generator when we figure out.
And, yeah, and we'll build it out in front, so we're not raising
3-phase.
users.
Okay.
So again, just the timeline with this one, the preliminary schedule is that the final design would be over the winter, bid in the spring, and then construction would take about a year. And then just to note, and Marty can, I think I have the right date in here, the expected completion of the treatment facility, which is needed for the operation of this, is about that same time frame. I think that was expected at the end of February of '25. So they'd be similar finish completion dates.
So we've got time to build this into 25's budget a little bit.
Yeah, we are going to continue to push the well water treatment to December. That's our goal. So
Good.
Marty and I both have been trying to push as much as we can.
Good.
All right.
I mean, it's no December of this year, but, it's a December.
Thanks.
So one thing I'm curious about, so in the turn lanes, the fee worked out to be about 15% of the estimated construction costs. In here, it's about 22%. The water guys get paid better than the street guys?
They probably do. That's why I'm not in the water group. It's much more complicated process, is the reason. We generally see just, it's a higher level through the plans, and construction can be as well.
More design work.
Yeah, the design is much more complicated than just going through all the permitting process that's involved with it. We get a working right-of-way permit from the county, and that's the level of our permitting for that. Still some coordination on the design side, but not really comparable, to be honest, with the well projects. They're a lot more complicated.
All right.
All right. I need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
If I could just point out, actually, those costs are for work all the way through.
Right, I see that it
Okay,
gets through.
that wasn't the
includes
cost for just
CA,
the
yep.
design. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, okay. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure it was known that was included.
No, this is the whole deal as far as Stantec's involvement.
Yes.
All right. I got a motion.
I'll second.
Got a second. Any more discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
I
Motion-
guess.
There's no guess.
I just wouldn't hold any of the numbers. They're
Well,
not
see.
valid for sure.
All right, motion carries. Item N. Who's handling that? Oh, congrats.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. You guys are flying through this meeting tonight, which is great, so I'll try to keep this moving forward too. This is the denial of responses to the RFP on 18541 Levee Street. This is the closest picture I could find. I know it's not Super McLean Park, but it's the closest picture I could find in there.
Well, if you get out of
Right,
that office,
photos we
you can
get.
go
I gotta take some photos, I guess, which I'll do that. I'm gonna kind of recap the process quick so you're aware of what happened so far. If you haven't been paying attention, the EDA approved an RFP on August 29th, 2023. This is the most recent process, not the one process that's been lasting for a couple of years now. The EDA received 4 proposals from that RFP. All proposals were reviewed by the EDA. Discussion at the EDA meeting on October 17th, which was last Tuesday, Related to the RFP included information related to the price at which the RFP was sent out with. Chair of the EDA, Hutner, supplied a document from Hennepin County on their process, noting it was a minimum bid process. Extensive discussion carried on about the price at which the parcel was listed for sale at on the RFP. Ultimately, EDA's recommendation is to deny all RFPs at this time and have the city hold on to the land. City Attorney Amy Schmidt was contacted after the EDA meeting to provide a response to the document provided by Chair Hutner and was provided in your packet for this meeting. So the council action tonight is either to, and I'm going to list the ones that I could think of for the meeting here, but you can either approve the denial of the responses to the RFP and hold on to the land. No, we will have to pay taxes on this because it doesn't hold a public purpose any longer. When it was a tax forfeit lot, it held a purpose of a parking lot or a future parking lot. We'll have to pay taxes on it. Now moving forward, and whether it's a big deal or not, I'm not sure. Approval of the denial of the responses to the RFP and reissue an RFP at a future meeting, which would be a council-directed item at this point. Table the denial and request the EDA to review the memo received from the city attorney with an updated recommendation. The memo was provided after the EDA meeting by the city attorney, Amy Schmidt. Or deny the denial of the responses to the RFP, which sounds like a really hard, convoluted sentence, but that is the answer. And then vote to award the RFP to one of the responsees. Am I missing any, Amy, that I'm aware of?
Mayor, members of the council, I don't see any other options, but certainly somebody could think of something. And I would note, if it's okay for me to interject, the memo that I prepared and offered to the council doesn't specifically address the document that was provided by the chair of the EDA. I wasn't aware of the full context of that document or the conversation around that document by the EDA, but I would note that it addresses a different type of disposal of a tax forfeited parcel by the county than what what you are talking about tonight. That document relates to a different part of the tax forfeiture procedure where they release properties to brokers, and it is a little bit different than exactly what you're talking about tonight. But that part was not specifically in my memo, but I would offer that for your consideration tonight.
Yes, I'm here to stand for any questions you may have, along with Amy and other staff that you may have questions for.
So I endured a good deal of this discussion around these RFPs, and but I think one of the primary drivers of the motion for denial was around this kind of open question about can we make money when we sell property or not, and I think you did a good job of describing, the scenario and the precedents and the fact that this is sort of a
Mess.
Still a mess, and it'll be worked out as people get sued and the court answers some of these types of questions. My question around this is, and this came up at the EDA meeting as well, is if we were to move ahead with selling this property as it was advertised, have we set a precedent that we are stuck with going forward, even though the rules may get refined or changed significantly in the future?
Mayor, member of the council, I know you wouldn't be creating a precedent if the rules change. I mean, obviously, we operate with the rules that we're in right now. I think that if the process changes in response to the decision of the Supreme Court, then you would be in that new world of rules, and so.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't really mean that the rules would change, but rather that the interpretation of those rulings sounded like they're pretty fuzzy in some ways. And does it apply to this situation? I saw where in your letter where the state has recommended to the county that they hold on to any profit that they have, kind of to see how this whole thing plays out. So it still feels like very much an open question ultimately on what can and can't be done with those things. And so that's the concern, is if we moved ahead with this, because we should at some point come to a conclusion on it, that we're not stuck with, well, you can't, if if the understanding changes that on some future project, some future lot, that the city could have it bid differently, that we're not stuck with something we did today or,
Right.
over this lot.
I think that the statute is fairly clear even now, even without the confusion that could be caused by the Supreme Court decision. And, we have to remember that that decision applies to the county and the kind of extrapolating it to the city and who's going to be liable for what, if it's considered a taking, if you sell it for more than the tax that was, owed when the property was forfeited, which at this point, I don't have that information. It's the thing to remember is that the statute is pretty clear that the process with this parcel being sold to you as a local government unit, the county already made a determination of the fair market value. I mean, it's right in the purchase agreement that the city signed with the county auditor to purchase the property just last year, and the county made its determination that it's worth $30,000. And so short of getting an appraisal from an independent appraiser, now there's very little argument that can be made that it's worth more than what the county has already determined it to be worth. And so it's safer it's less risky to the city if you follow the statute where the statute says that you sell it for fair market value as determined by the county, because that's what's happened in this situation already.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, what I'm hearing is that the answer is no.
Correct.
And I think that's good. I think we, also as a city need to have the discussion about whether or not we should be making money on these things. We're not a private business. We're not,
right.
We should be covering our costs for sure, so that the taxpayers aren't taking on the difference. I'll just say personally, I don't know that we should be. But that's a separate conversation, I think.
It is.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't stuck in this model if it turns out that it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. You're not creating a precedent that you would have to follow if the legal landscape changes.
Okay. That works for me.
So it seems like we have two questions, kind of. We have denial of the denial or approval of the denial, and then we have, if we deny the denial, then we have to reward it or award it to.
Want to take them one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. That's smart.
If it helps, maybe to reframe the language to say that you would reject all the bids rather than deny. If that just helps clarify what your action would be. The way that the RFP framed it was that that the city reserved the right to reject all of the proposals.
Yeah, so these options listed up here are one of four you can select from, whichever one.
And then you won't have to say denial.
Denial.
All right, well, let's.
Here's where I am
Let's
on
have a
this thing.
motion.
This thing has been
Yes.
beat to death for 2 years. And we should never be at this stage where we are. It was messed up from day one.
Yep.
Out of what EDA was after on this original deal, we have 4 proposals that are exactly what the EDA was asking for. All four of them are exactly what they're asking for. And personally, and I like the option that's what's best for the city on this thing. Personally, to me, it's perfect. I mean, one of the options combines 2 lots together, and in my opinion, we get a much nicer looking building out of the both lots combined together than we do out of the individual that wanted to build a single triplex. So, in my opinion, we just go with what the council goes with what EDA originally wanted, and we get over this thing.
All right, well, we need a motion to deal with the denial, right?
You make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we do not follow EDA and we sell the property.
So we deny the denial and.
However you want to word it.
And we award the RFP.
You can word it however you want. Whatever legal mumbo jumbo.
Okay,
you
need a
want.
second.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the denial of the denial?
I want to clarify with Mayor and Council that you're selecting the RFP related to Riverview Villas, correct? When
Well,
or
No,
are you
we're
making
not
it
there
so
yet. Not got that
okay.
far yet.
You, at this point, you did not, okay, got it. Make it 2 separate motions, got it, okay.
I just,
Just want to make sure, yep.
any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those that want to, any no votes? I think we're good. So it carries. So now we need to pick a response.
Correct.
And yeah, I guess I've got a few notes here. We've talked about guided use over and over again. Medium density makes sense. Me personally, I think medium density makes sense on that road. I think when we get to the other roads, we can talk about it, because then I don't necessarily agree with that. But the guided use, this came up in the planning commission with one of the members. The guided use in the area implies that somehow there's going to have to be properties assembled. I think one of these, or 3 of these responses do that. Also the one that combines the adjacent property also provides an alleyway, which I think long-term is a better solution than having all the driveways. And I think it's better long-term use of the property. It benefits the city. So that's where I'm at.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So after we pick the RFP, they still have to go through the whole planning, so if we've got comments on the design or the way things look or things we want to change, we don't have to address that now.
Not at this time. If you're selecting one of the RFPs related to the medium density, they're going to have to come in with a concept plan, preliminary plat, and final plat, along with a rezoning, because
I have lots of feedback, but
Yeah.
I too believe it makes more sense to, if the market itself can combine 2 lots and do what's on the master plan for the area, whatever the correct term is, I think that makes the most sense to me. I would I have feedback on all 3 of the drawings that were on there and things that they see differently,
Right,
but
yeah.
that's not for now.
I think it's safe to assume we can just pick
the person, yeah.
a developer, or
Yeah.
not necessarily.
correct. Yeah, the
specific.
finalizations of either one of the RFP responses would be fulfilled at a future meeting.
Okay.
So I will say, having watched, I didn't have to sit through the planning commission meetings, but I watched all the planning commission meetings about this, and I guess I'll voice this here, I've voiced it to others, but disappointed with the way it was handled by the EDA. I feel like the EDA really want to handle it. I felt like there was a lot of personal bias in some of the conversations that were being happened. I expect better of the people that are representing the city, and I was disappointed with the way a lot of that was handled, candidly.
Well, it started out right in the ditch, the way they are.
Yeah, there's a lot of background to it, and I went back and watched some of the old stuff too from well before my time, but I think there's a lot more going on there than that, and it's just, the only word I can go with is disappointing. Like, I just expect better. So I think we need to do what's right by the city, and in my opinion, choosing the
Okay. So
builder
then
that does it.
does anybody else have any comments, or?
I do on the, and I'm just going to call them 2 proposals, because the 3 of them are essentially variations of the, of the 2-lot type of situation. And I think that ultimately gives the opportunity for a better project. I don't feel like we should be giving directions on, 5 individuals or 2 3s or 3 2s. I think that's the normal development process, that the developer would come to the planning commission with a proposed design, and then they will do what they always do with it, and and come up ultimately with what's the best looking or best serving project that serves the city best, based on the parameters that the zoning and so forth have taken. So I think that the 2-lot proposal looks better. I wouldn't want to tie anybody's hands going forward with the specific alignment of the buildings on the site. The other proposal that was given, I think they did a good job of working with the space that they had. However, I have concerns about their financial situation. We asked for some proof that they would have the ability to complete the project and some information about their financial situation. I think we got less than what we asked for from both respondents, but the letter from the lender for the, I've forgotten their, I'm going to get their name back
Riverview?
here. Oak River Properties only says that they have the liquid funds in place to acquire the lot. And that's a long way short of actually building the project. I also couldn't make a lot of sense out of their financial balance sheet. And I don't know, Zach, if you looked at that, if that made more sense to you, but it didn't.
No.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. So that didn't give me additional confidence. So for those two reasons, that with the proposed scoring sheets that we had at the EDA, the cluster of three proposals all scored higher for me based on what I think the ultimate value of the project is, and also on this financial situation that doesn't seem to be as stable. They've only been in the construction business for a year and in existence for only a couple of years, which, everybody has to start somewhere, but they state that they've done $450,000 worth of projects so far. That sounds like one house to me. So again, it doesn't inspire the same level of confidence for me, and so I ended up scoring that proposal lower than the other ones. Those are my comments.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to award the RFP to Riverview Villas MN LLC.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. All right.
Mayor and Council, we'll follow up with a purchase agreement and everything else that'll come to council for that acquisition of the land, and then we'll work with the applicant to be able to finalize everything else. You'll see those in the coming months. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. And if there are no objections, we'll be.
Got one more item.
Oh, we added one?
The insurance thing.
Oh, that's right. No, that was.
Part of the consent. That was in the consent.
All right. Any more objections, we will be adjourned.
I didn't think that was all that.
We're adjourned.
I didn't think it was all that busy.